Okay, hello, you. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so happy you're here because today I am sharing one of my absolute favorite practices for creating more intimacy and deeper connection with your partner or in any sort of relationship. It is my go-to practice. It is a thing that I always bring, and now Kellen brings it into our relationship whenever we feel like either we need more connection, maybe we're already in a good place and we want more intimacy, or we're working through some hard shit and we need a way to connect and to be able to communicate with one another in a way that feels productive and luscious, delicious. It is so amazing. So the practice itself is called Fears, Loves, and Desires. And it is for you if you have always wanted to connect more deeply with your partner, but maybe they have a hard time expressing their emotions or their truth, or maybe both of you do. Maybe it's something like sex or problems you're having in your relationship, or your relationship kind of feeling rusty or boring, things that feel tender to communicate about, things that feel hard or that tend to bring up fights or hurt feelings or shut down, or things that you want to avoid, and you want to stop those patterns, and you want a practice, a contained communication exercise that helps you get all of this out in a way that actually brings you closer together. This is for you. It's also for you if, again, you want a framework to really start talking more deeply about your sex life, about your intimacy. It's also something that you can use in any relationship if you're making big decisions, if you're moving through growth, if you are trying to decide things like whether or not to have kids, or do we enroll our kid in this private school, like big decisions that you're making together. It's also something that you can do when things are going really well in your relationship and you just want to increase your connection and your intimacy and to get to know your partner with fresh eyes. It's also, again, that fresh eyes, if you feel like you're in a bit of a rut or things are kind of boring in your relationship, you're kind of mundane, you're doing your day-to-day, but you're not really connecting on a deeper level, and you want a super simple, easy tool to connect with one another. And it's also a practice you can do in non-romantic relationships. So I've done it with my business partners. I've done this Actually, I haven't done this with friends quite yet, but I'm kind of inspired to now. But it can also be a really amazing way, I think, to talk to your kids, maybe your teens about things, big transitions, maybe puberty, maybe them deciding what college to go to. If you're finding yourself in a place where you kind of feel stuck, or maybe you're arguing with your kids a lot, this can also be something that you do. I'm also going to have a free guided audio for you in the show notes that you can download to lead you through the practice if you like a guide for the practice. Now, one of the things that I really want to start with in terms of this practice, and I'm going to tell you up front, is if you want more intimacy, if you want more connection, if you want more honesty, if you want to be communicating with your partner on an effective and deep level, it means that you are going to have to ask to have this conversation. It means that you are going to have to put on your big girl, big non-binary, big man pants and step into leadership in your relationship. And this is also what I call erotic leadership, being the initiator, the creatrix in your relationship, meaning to have the relationship that you really want. You are going to have to step into being and creating what it is that you really want. One of the concepts that I talk about a lot in my work is creating a culture in your relationship, creating a culture of, meaning culture is like the norms, the ways that you operate in your relationship. And in this Fears, Loves, Desire practice, you are creating the culture of open, honest, vulnerable communication with one another. And that means that you're going to have to get behind that for yourself. And so if that's something that you're wanting to work on this year or in your relationship in general, there's so much that can come up around this. We'll get into it in the episode. But if you already know that you are wanting deeper work on this is what I work with people on in my one-on-one coaching, helping you shed any narratives, any fears, any smallness, any judgments of your partner that are keeping you from stepping into that creatrix, initiator, erotic leadership in your relationship. I work with people on embodying their authentic, erotic leadership identity, and it has absolutely saved marriages, saved sex lives, completely transformed the relationships of my clients. And you can book a call with me in the link in the show notes to explore working one-on-one together to work on all of this stuff. Okay, so let's get into it. First, I'm going to break down how to do the practice. Then I'll talk about the benefits, and I'm going to share what it's brought for me in my partnerships and relationships. And then I'll talk about how to approach bringing this practice to your partner. I got you. And other little tips and advice that I have for you. I want to credit Layla Martin for teaching me this practice in my coaching certification, and let's get into how to do it. So the practice itself is really, really simple. One person is going to be the speaker. The second person is going to be the listener. There are going to be 3 rounds each of this practice. One where you share your fears. What are you afraid of? The second round is going to be loves. What do you love about me? And the third round is going to be desires. What do you desire? So in each round, each person will get to play both the role of the listener and the speaker. When you are the listener, you are just listening. You are doing something called holding space. You are not responding. You are there to listen with an open heart and with safety for the other person. When you're speaking, you are going to keep on speaking for the whole 3 minutes of the time that you get to speak. If someone stops speaking in those 3 minutes and you're the listener, you are going to just prompt them again with a question. Either, what are you afraid of? What do you love about me? Or what do you desire? You're also going to want to decide on a topic for your practice. So your topic can be general. You can talk about all of life. It can be about your relationship. So you might say, we're doing fears, loves, and desires on how we're feeling in our relationship. It can be specifically about sex. We're going to do fears, loves, and desires specifically about our sex life. It can be something that you're deciding on, right? An example is whether to have kids or not, or another kid. So we're going to do fears, loves, desires around this decision of having another kid. So you're going to decide together on the focus of your practice. And so then when you get into it, the only thing that you need is a timer. Obviously, you want to be able to do this in a time where you're able to really pay attention to one another. It's nice to sit across from one another and to really look at each other in the eyes as you're doing this. And again, giving your full presence. So the first round is fears, and what you're going to do is you're going to set a 3-minute timer. You're going to decide who's the speaker, who's the listener. And when the timer starts, whoever's a listener is going to say, what are you afraid of? Then for the next 3 minutes, the person who is the speaker is going to share, right? I'm afraid that you don't think that I'm sexy anymore. I'm afraid that you're too busy and you don't care about our relationship right now. I'm afraid that we're going to get old and boring and crusty and our sex life is going to die forever. You're going to say really honestly whatever it is that you're afraid of in relationship to that topic. Again, if the person stops speaking, the listener, you're going to ask again, what are you afraid of? When the timer goes off, the person who is listening, you are going to say, thank you for your honesty. Now, this is really incredible because obviously naming our fears to one another is terrifying. Being radically honest with each other in relationships is not what we have been taught in our relationships. We've all been taught to hide, to contort, to tell little white lies or maybe outright straight up lies in order to make the other person happy, to appease them, to avoid conflict, so many different things. And so by saying thank you for your honesty, you're giving that positive feedback loop of it is safe here to be honest with each other. And oh my Lord, if there's one thing that I could tell you that I think is one of the top 3 things that you could do to bring more just depth and health to your relationship is creating an environment where it's safe to be honest with one another. And then you are going to switch. And of course, whoever was a listener becomes a speaker, yada, yada, you get it. You're going to put a 3-minute timer on again, and you'll ask the next person to share, what are you afraid of? Then you're going to move on to the next round, which is loves. So, and again, thank you for your honesty. And then you're going to move on to round 2, which is loves. And so you're going to do the same thing, 3 minutes each, listener, speaker. And the question for this round is, what do you love about me? And you can share anything and everything that you love about the other person. I love how thoughtful you are. I love how you did our laundry this week. I love how you bring me a water bottle at night when I'm being bratty and lazy. You can literally say whatever it is that you want. And this is so beautiful because appreciation, loving each other, also one of the key ingredients for keeping a relationship thriving and happy in the long term. It's so important to center in your love and your genuine appreciation for one another. And who doesn't love hearing what other people love about them? Or maybe it feels uncomfortable, but that's another edge of receiving more deeply from your partner. Okay, the third round is then going to be desires. What is it that you desire? So you might say, I desire to connect with you intimately. I desire to really give it our all in our sex lives. I desire to create a culture of sex where we're open to learning and not getting it perfect, and we can be messy, and there can be different seasons, and that can all be okay, and that we commit to working on it together. So you just share whatever it is you desire in relationship to your topic. And after each round, in loves, in desires, in fears, whenever you're done, you say, thank you for your honesty. Now, so much will unfold in this practice, and it is honestly just so beautiful. And you might think like, oh my God, we're going to talk about all these things. Like, what are we going to do afterwards? What if there's things for us to process? You will be surprised. Most of the time when I do this practice, once we get to the end of the last round, there's almost like a settling that happens. It feels complete. And I think one of the reasons why is because of this active listening and not responding aspect. Because most of the time in any conversation, in any communication, definitely during any fight, all we really want is to be heard, to be acknowledged, to be validated, and to know that we've been heard and acknowledged and validated in how we really feel. And so usually the practice will be pretty complete as is. The way that I learned this practice, you generally kind of want to leave it alone and let the practice be the practice. This is also important because, again, one of the big underlying skills you're practicing when you do this is creating a culture and a container where you're able to communicate with one another safely and honestly. Safety and honesty. If you have this, I feel like you can move mountains together. If you can be very real with one another and feel safe enough to really express how you are in a given moment or in a given chapter in your relationship, you can move through so much. Now, again, I don't think that every relationship is meant to last forever. That's like a whole nother conversation. Anyways, I'm not going to get sidetracked by that, but it's so powerful. If you don't honor the sacredness of this practice kind of being complete as it is, you kind of run the risk of repeating the same pattern of like, oh, I was honest with you, now you're mad, and then now we're fighting. Now, of course, you're human. This practice can get messy. Maybe it's not going to feel, oh my God, we really worked through everything and everything's like hunky-dory now. Hunky-dory, it's a funny word. Anyways, and that's okay. So if there is something that got brought up that you feel like you need to discuss more, or maybe is a point that you two want to get into maybe deeper, they say something that triggered you or, brought something up that you want to discuss, you want to just name, there was this aspect that I would like to go deeper on, and you want to set aside a different time to talk about it. You might set up a different time to actually go into fears, loves, desires about that thing. I know, it's meta, but you know what? This is relationships, y'all. It's going to take some work. Or you just might set aside another time and conversation, talk about it. Try to keep this practice as contained as possible. Another option is to do this practice before a sex date. So actually a really big turn on for a lot of people is actually like emotional safety, openness, intimacy, vulnerability. And so I know that I have felt very turned on after this practice sometimes, not always. And it's just like a beautiful place to like make love from. I mean, you just shared all of these things you love about each other, and then like the things that you want to be desired to create together, and it can be like, just a very fun, sexy time as well. Which takes me into what are the benefits of this practice. I mean, I'm sure you have already listened to this and been like, wow, there can be so many benefits of it, but I just want to name a few more. And so I think one of the big benefits here is that you really get to know your partner more deeply, and you get to hear from them outside of the like mundane sort of day-to-day checking in. Here's my day. Oh, here's what happened. Like we can get almost into this like narrator of our lives kind of dynamic, especially in long-term relationships, or maybe someone you see every day, right? Where it's just like, okay, and then I'm just literally reciting to you almost like a journal, and then at 8 a.m. I did this, and then da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then I had this conversation with my boss, and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, it can get so fucking boring. And this is a way, like, I have been so surprised, even when Kellen and I do this conversation in times where I feel like we're already close or things are good, but we're like, oh, let's just do one to see what happens. Like, I get to hear perspectives of him and his thoughts in ways that I honestly didn't predict, or ways where I'm like, oh, I would have never thought that you were thinking about this, or that this was on your mind, or this is the way that you want to approach it. And honestly, it keeps your partner staying interesting. One of the things that we can also get into is like, what is our story of our partner, or our narrative of our partner? We think we know them so well, like the back of our hand, or you might think that about your kids or other people in your life. And what emerges can really just add like a level of dynamism and like that exciting, almost honeymoon feeling that I think is so important to reconnect with throughout relationship, of like, oh wow, I don't actually know this person, right? We don't actually, my frame of view is that I want to feel like my partner is an endless mystery to me, someone who's constantly growing and changing. And I think that's true of every single one of us as humans. And in this practice, you get to share in that with one another. The other benefit is presence. That is also one of the deepest medicines for your relationship. Actually setting aside the time to not just spend time together, but spend time together in presence, in actual like deep attention to one another. Yeah, you might sit next to each other and spend tons of time together watching Netflix or watching movies, but there's a difference between this real presence with one another. Obviously, there's safety of being vulnerable and emotions and being able to share them. I will say that, especially if you are in relationship with someone who's been conditioned with like toxic masculinity where they're not allowed to share their feelings, or maybe other, systems of oppression or patriarchy or things like that make it feel like, oh, like I can't really share what I'm feeling. I will just say, like, particularly in hetero relationships, when you're like, he like can't access his feelings, he doesn't know how to communicate. This is super, super, super powerful and medicinal for that type of dynamic of actually creating safety for your partner to get in touch with their emotions, to be able to learn how to actually share them and communicate them. And again, get that feedback that it's safe to do so. It is so, 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 so powerful. Learning active listening, I already went over that, but really learning how to listen to each other is just one of the biggest gifts that we can give anybody in our lives, especially our partners. Everyone just wants to be heard, honestly. I think most fights would be resolved so much faster if we both stopped to really listen to one another and acknowledge how each person is feeling, even if those things clash with one another. That takes away so much of the charge in so many conflicts that we have. And of course, connection. And I think the other thing is like centering in that love part. It like creates that spark. It makes you feel wanted. It makes you feel loved. It makes you feel seen and appreciated. And the desire part is so powerful for that creation, anchoring into this mutual desire. I think that there is no other point of relationships, at least to me, other than like we are together to create something together, whether that's a friendship. We are here to create a good fucking time. We are here to create like this bond where we get to be real with one another and connect with another person through this crazy road of life. In a romantic relationship, it's always about mutually building something better together than you could do on your own. I forgot what it was. I don't know if it was a podcast or a book. I just heard it the other night, but it's like, a single person without another person is like nothing, and I'm not saying that in terms of like, I believe in independence and all of that, but you know what I'm saying. Like the purpose of our lives is to connect and to co-create, with one another. Even if you're doing something internally, I feel like it always ends up being in this, connection to all beings and all things. So yeah, just so many benefits, not to mention like it's easy, it's simple, you don't need much, you just need to sit your asses down, find some time, which I know could be hard, but again, you just got to do that shit. That's just life. I have a lot of compassion for it, trust me. And like, we just have to prioritize things that are important to us. If you need to whisper it to each other, once your kids are in bed, like do it, because it's so, 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 so crucial. Okay. I'm going to end with a few things. First, if you really want to do this and you are scared shitless, or you're like, how do I approach this? We've never done anything like this. This is not something that feels normal to me or my partner. I am terrified to bring it up. Here's how I always approach bringing something new into your relationship with your partner. Start with your why. Share with them not only, hey, do you want to do this, but why do you want to do it? I want to do it because I care about our sex life and I want to be able to open up communicating about it, even though we both feel awkward as fuck because we've never been taught that we could be honest and share about this. I want us to talk about this because I'm sick of fighting with you, and I want us to be able to actually listen to each other and just to see if something like this could work to bring us closer, because I love you and I care about our relationship. Can you see how enrolling someone in the why gives so much of that mutual motivation to show up for something that feels edgy or that feels new? And then also always approach introducing something new that feels edgy, or you're afraid like, oh, they might have pushback, they might be scared, like do it when you're both resourced and regulated. This is so basic, but Bitch, I forget this all the fucking time. Like, you want to do it in a moment where you're like, we're fighting. Well, you never want to do this, and I'll have this exercise. Okay, maybe I'm just like projecting my own past mistakes here. But like, just make sure you're like well fed, you're rested, you're feeling chill, you're feeling like baseline, like okay, okay. And then here are some caveats and some tips that I have for you. Be prepared to hear shit that's hard. Be prepared to hear stuff that you don't want to hear. Be prepared to be terrified. Be prepared to have resistance. This is something that I'm always surprised by. I have been doing this practice with my partner for 6 years, and I am generally, Kellen will bring it up to me too, which is like such a gift. Actually, he shared this with his coworkers before, which I think is just like the sweetest thing. So just evidence too that when you show up as an initiator in your relationships, it pours over to your partner and it pours over to the world. So fucking sweet. But sorry, I lost my train of thought. Be prepared to hear shit that's hard. And remember, especially for the fears part, I was talking about resistance. Know that there will be resistance and just decide to commit to it, or just tell your partner, I'm feeling resistance. I will tell Kellen that. And then he'll remind me every time we do this, we never regret it. And again, you're creating that culture in your relationship. The other caveat or the other little, warning, sage advice is remember that your fears are more of a clearing, more of like getting out and moving emotion through you. Remember that you are not your fears. Your partner is not their fears. You and your partner are not your wounding, but they are also a part of you. They are also part of the charge, part of what's alive in the relationship, and letting yourself be honest and just get them out and to be witnessed in them is such powerful medicine. So again, don't think that whatever you say as your fears or that your partner says as your fears is the ultimate truth. There are so many incredibly wow, I never thought I would say this out loud to my partner, borderline this feels like I'm a shit person for having this, that I have said to Kellen. We've done this around marriage, and I've said things like, I fear that marriage doesn't even really it's dumb and it's stupid and there's no point in doing it. And this is at a juncture where he's telling me he wants to get married to me, right? And I say that and he receives that with the consciousness and the knowing my fears are the smallest, most wounded, not true part of me. And if you need your partner to listen to this, you can also introduce a practice by having them listen to this podcast. Just really, really remember that. It's more just to move your delulu through you. That is so much of what the fears part is. And I think that that's it. Also, expect miracles. Be open to this being incredible. Be open to it being wow, such a refresh in your relationship. I think that most of the time it ends up being like that. So please go forward with your big heart, with your courage, and be the initiatrix, the creatrix, the creator of the deep and powerful, soul-filled, honest, raw, messy, but fucking beautiful relationships that you want to create. Oh, I'll also add, last thing. I have done this with my friend Joe, who has also been a teaching and business partner. And so this can be such a powerful thing to do in so many contexts, so many relationships. So, don't write that off. And again, if you are wow, this edge, this way of living, this way of showing up is so much how I want to show up in my relationship, but maybe I'm stuck in bitterness and resentment towards my partner, or maybe there's so much conditioning and fear in me to be able to approach this, or you're just oh my God, I want to be this person. I want to create these types of relationships, and I really want to be supported to step into this type of identity in my relationships. Again, my books are open for one-on-one coaching, and so much of my coaching is around really getting you centered into what kind of relationships, what kind of sex, what kind of love, what kind of life is it that you really desire to live? And then really helping you step into the identity of the person that can hold that can move that into action by asking to have conversations like this. And in our sessions, we will move through whatever needs to be cleared, whatever trauma is being stored in your body that makes this either feel hard or vulnerable or difficult, and then helping you take that courageous action through doing things like this practice with your partner. And for 6 full months, my one-on-one container is 6 months, you practice living, breathing, moving, fucking, making love as this powerful identity and creator in your love life, in your sex life, in your life. So again, there is going to be a guided audio for you to do the practice if you like a guided audio. If not, you can just re-listen to this, get the steps down, do your thing. Have fun, go do it. DM me, write me, report to me how this goes. And I love you so, so much. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you on the next episode.